All right, so this is my 2023 Levo SL. This is the new Levo SL, slightly upgraded 50 Newton meter motor, still the same 320 watt hour battery. This model normally comes with a 160-150 setup. This is the Expert model, which comes with a Performance Elite Fox 36 and Performance Elite Float X. Great shock, great fork. For this type of bike, it's a great setup for this bike. The Expert model comes with a GX T-type axis transmission, and it comes with a 150 dropper and some alloy bars and some specialized stem. I upgraded this one quite a bit. Started off with the fork. The fork is a 170 millimeter Fox 36. I just upgraded the air spring. I had an air spring from a previous bike that I just tossed in there, so now it's 170 up front. The shock is interesting. Obviously this is EXT Storia lock V3, so it's the latest EXT shock. And this is interesting because I upgraded the stroke on the shock. So normally it comes with a 210 by 55 stroke Float X. This is actually a 216 by 63.5, or essentially 8.5 by 2.5 stroke shock. And what I did was I installed an offset bushing up here at that upper eyelet, and this one here has a flip chip. So in the short setting, or in the closer setting, this shock essentially becomes a 212 by 63.5. So instead of a 210 by 55, it's now a 212 by 63.5. So that extra 8.5 millimeter of shock stroke actually gives the rear end approximately 170 millimeters. It could be a little bit more, a little bit less, I'm not sure, but it's approximately 170 millimeters out back. So now I have this setup where it's a 170 setup. I have the headset cup in the front set in the neutral position. The neutral position gives it a 64-degree head tube angle. Okay. Now, by putting a slightly longer shock in the back, I did raise the back end just a little bit, but by increasing the fork stroke, I lifted the front end just a little bit. So the Geo is essentially identical to the stock configuration. My bottom bracket did raise up a little bit. I measured it at 349. So it's just a few millimeters higher than stock. But when you have 170 out back, you actually want a slightly higher bottom bracket, because as you're sagged into the bike, as you're sitting into the bike, you're sagged in more. 30% sag of 170 is more than 30% sag of obviously 150 millimeters. So therefore you are sagged quite a bit more. I've done some stuff to get this bike very light. This one's let's see, first thing I did was I installed the wheels. These are Ibis S35 wheels and hubs. The hubs are Industry 9. They're the old Torch hubs, but it's a mullet setup, obviously, this bike. And the wheels are relatively light, probably about 1,600 grams total for the wheels. Installed a 1-up carbon bar. I had an old NV stem from a previous bike that doesn't shave much weight. I just had it from a previous bike, but it probably shaves just a few grams. I upgraded the shock from it came with a 1-up shock. I replaced it with another 1-up shock, but this is the 180 millimeter. It came with a 150 or 160. I think it was 150 millimeter 1-up, but it was a 34.8 millimeter. This one is a 31.8, 31.9 millimeter with a shim in there. It's significantly lighter than this 180 is a lot lighter than a 150 thicker diameter shock. Okay, so I lost weight despite having more drop on the dropper post. This is a SQ Labs 612 carbon saddle, very light saddle. I think it's like 130 grams. I've had it for years, haven't had any issues with it. The GX transmission is the same GX transmission. I did upgrade the GX cassette with a XO cassette. It's a little bit lighter. Other than that, oh, I got the carbon cranks. Came with alloy cranks. These carbon cranks are 165 millimeter in length. The stock one is 170 alloy. So this is 165, a little bit shorter crank. Put in some crank booties on it. So total, this bike with water bottle cage, with the XDR pedals, I think the XDR pedals are 310 grams. This whole bike with the pedals, with Assegai up front. I have a DHR2 in the back, but it's the XO casing. Might need to get a tougher casing back there. I am riding this a lot harder than I thought I was going to be riding it, so I'll probably need a double down casing. But currently the bike with pedals is slightly under 39 pounds, so it's 38.9 pounds. I'll find a photo of it later on when I weighed it. So this is the bike. It's you know, I've had it for probably 10 rides now, so almost a month now, and man, it's been a great bike. Nice short chainstay. So you know, the question people are going to ask is, oh, if you want a 170 bike, why didn't you buy the Kenevo SL, right? And the reason why was I really, you know, I'm 5'8", and for me an ideal chainstay length is like 430, 435, and I really wanted that short chainstay. This one has a 432 millimeter chainstay, and for my height, this is the S3 by the way, so it has about a 445, 450 reach, and 432 chainstay. Those proportions are great for someone my height. I understand if you're taller, if you're you know, if you're over 6 foot, it's probably not ideal to have such a short chainstay. But if you're a shorter person like me, or average height or shorter, having that nice short chainstay on an e-bike is a bit of a godsend, to be honest, because there aren't a lot of bikes out there that has such a short, playful chainstay, and having that short chainstay really allowed me to really ride this bike like you would a standard mountain bike. So it's playful, it's tossable, it's lively, it's agile. It's just a lot of fun compared to other bikes, and it's light. You know, it's under 40 pounds as shown. So it's got a lot of great things going for it. Looks wise, it looks pretty good. The motor's a little bulbous, you know, for a lightweight bike. There are better motors out there. I got this one mainly for this motor's efficiency. I know that this is a really efficient setup, and with the light battery you can get the weight pretty light while still having a very capable bike. So you know, it's for someone my weight, I weigh about 150 pounds, and I'm in average shape, you know. On a regular bike, a regular acoustic bike, you know, I'll do like a 10-15 mile ride, 1,500 feet in about an hour and a half, you know. That's my typical ride on an acoustic bike. I'm not in fantastic shape, but I am light, so having a light bike like this makes a difference. You're able to go quite the distance. I'm able to keep up with most of my buddies on full fat bikes if they're on trail mode. Okay, if I'm riding with them on trail mode, I'm able to keep up just fine. You know, I'm doing like, you know, in 2 hours I'm doing 3,800 feet of elevation in about 2 hours of riding time. That's pretty good. That's what my buddies are doing on their full fat bikes. Now, granted, the reason why is I'm 150 pounds, right? If you are much heavier, you're not going to get that type of, you're definitely not going to get that type of elevation I'm getting. Here's what the cockpit looks like. I took out the specialized SWAT tool, and I put a 1-up in there. It's a little bit lighter. Again, this is a little bit of a weight weenie build, or actually it is a weight weenie build. Despite putting a coil shock in there. Now this coil shock is actually pretty light. It was only like something like what was it, 170 grams heavier than the air shock, so it wasn't a huge weight penalty. Okay, these EXT lightweight coils are pretty damn light. That thing's like 260 grams for that coil, 425 pound spring. They gave me 2 springs, 425 and 450. It's currently on the 425 right now. Oh, one thing you can do to lighten the weight is you could take out the SRAM HSC, I think they're called HSC rotors, and put some lighter rotors. These are the Shimano Frieza rotors, because these wheels are these hubs are center lock. That's why I have to use these rotors. The one in the back is a 180 out back. Now, typically 180 is not great for an e-bike, but with these fins, with these aluminum fins, you're actually able to. It doesn't fade very easily. Okay, it stays pretty cool. Long descents, it doesn't fade. It doesn't smell. So they're pretty good despite being 180. Again, this is a lighter bike. I'm a lighter rider. I could get away with that. You're a heavier guy, probably better to put a 200 minimum out back, right? So complaints, I do have a few complaints about this bike. It's not perfect, no bike is. Obviously the first complaint is the size of the motor. It's it's pretty bulbous for a lightweight bike. I love the way the Trek Fuel EX looks, that small motor. Reason why I didn't go with that bike is it doesn't come with a mullet setup. You could make it mullet, obviously, but it's probably not totally ideal. And I really wanted a mullet bike. This one had even a shorter chainstay than that Trek. So that's, and also under most riding conditions, I did ride the Trek in the parking lot. It was nice and quiet, but it felt a little rubbery to me. Like didn't give me the same support this bike does. I think this motor might be just slightly more powerful in most scenarios, most riding scenarios. Obviously, every motor has their ideal power band, where it's certain RPM, certain cadences, it's a little stronger and it's a little weaker than others, right? So every motor has their pros and cons. Not saying one's better than the other, but this one, under most pedaling scenarios, I feel like it's a little bit more powerful for my style, my speed. I'm more of a high cadence pedaler. Okay, I'm always in the higher gears most of the time, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm getting such good range. I'm gonna do a trail called Joplin pretty soon. That's about 5,000 feet elevation. It's basically up those hills all the way up, all the way around. It's roughly 5,000 feet, 25 miles. I should be able to do that just fine with this battery. I'm aiming to do that in under 3 hours. I should be able to do that under 3 hours. This thing's pretty quick, actually. It's I'm telling people that it's if you're the right rider, right weight rider, it's essentially as quick as most full fat bikes in a trail mode. Maybe not trail, maybe between eco to trail, which is plenty. So I've had a lot of different bikes. I've had some light bikes. I've had some heavy bikes. I really prefer the lighter bike for my weight. It's 40 pounds. 40-pound bike. I weigh 150 pounds. It's a certain percentage of my weight. If you're a 200-pound rider, having a 50-pound bike is a smaller percent of your overall weight, right? So for lighter riders, I think having these light bikes is absolutely great. You're able to get up most things, and it allows you to get a little bit fitter. I've noticed that I'm a lot fitter than I used to be ever since I've owned this bike. Bike I sold previously was a Pole Voima. That's a big CNC fully machined Pole Voima. It's 190 bike, and I put a Fox 40 up front, so it's actually a 190 in the back, 203 up front. I'll show some photos of that later, but that thing was a beast. It was absolute monster truck. This thing is like the complete opposite of that bike. This thing's agile, playful. The other one is just basically you just plow through everything with that bike. Okay. I had to put downhill tires on it because when you have a heavier bike, when you make those impacts, when you hit stuff, that heavier bike, it just seems to really amplify. So you need to have a much beefier wheel setup, much beefier tire setup to avoid flats. Okay. These lighter bikes, you could get away with a slightly lighter wheel, slightly lighter casing tire, and I haven't had any issues with this EXO setup in the local trails. So I'm in Southern California. These local trails, there aren't a ton of sharp rocks, so you're able to get away with EXO casing. Now for trips and stuff like that, I'll put a heavier casing. but for local trails like like everyday riding, this casing tire is totally adequate. Okay. Let's see. Oh, so complaints. Besides the motor being a little bit bulbous, I like the cockpit. Cockpit's nice. The brakes are a little bit on the weak side. I do need to trim it a little bit. It's a little long. These are the what are they called? The Code Stealths. They kind of point inwards, and I think they're designed for internal headset routing. You can still use it in this setup. It's looks reasonably clean. I like it because it looks pretty clean, but they are a little bit on the weak side. I'm used to much more powerful brakes, but so far they've been okay. I'm keeping them around because they look pretty decent on the bike. It looks good on the bike. Okay. There are more powerful options, but for my weight, it's not terrible. Okay. Another complaint I had is this rubber flap right here. Okay. This rubber flap is designed to keep dirt and rocks from getting in between the swing arm and the seat tube here. As the rear end is swinging up and down, what happens is it makes when it gets dusty, it makes a little chirping sound or a squeaking sound. It's like geeker geeker. It's just annoying when it gets pretty dirty. So I need to figure out a way to put something down there, maybe put some wax or something to allow it to swing or move without making that squeaky sound. But that's a squeak. It's not from any of the linkages. I checked all the linkages. As soon as you wipe the bottom here, once you wipe it with your finger, get rid of some of the dust, the squeakiness goes away for for about 10 miles, and then the squeaky sound comes back because the dust gathers down there. So that's one downside of this bike. Other than that, oh, the other complaint I have, so I mentioned I'm running a 180 dropper here. I'm 5'8", got about a 32-inch inseam, so I have pretty long legs. On other e-bikes, I'm able to run a 210 millimeter dropper. If I'm able to, some bikes I could, it's more straight, the seat tube, and I could drop it all the way down. I run a 210 dropper on 2 of my bikes right now. And on this bike, I could only get a 180 there. It ends right about an inch or two above the kink. Okay, yeah, right about here. I could insert this about maybe up to here, okay, before it makes contact, but I can't really put much of a bigger dropper on this. So I'm stuck with a 180 dropper, which isn't terrible, but I do like big dropper posts because when you're riding some technical trails, when you have that lower dropper, it allows your foot to dab a little bit easier. You know, sometimes you got to dab, and having that lower dropper it just adds a little bit of confidence as you're descending. You know, just have that lower dropper. Other than that, my GoPro broke, so I don't have any good riding footage of this bike, but it shreds. You know, it jumps really well. Oh, I forgot to mention, yeah, it does pop, it does jump pretty well. You know, I was worried about this coil shock. You know, putting a coil shock, I thought I was going to mute the trails a little bit. Almost, yeah, I think all my bikes, I'm running coil on all my bikes, and I just like the feel of coil. It's hard to go back to a regular air. Even though the air shock was fine, it was poppy fine, it was fun, it was still very plush. This suspension is very plush. Plush yet supportive. I found that the coil, it's still plush yet supportive. It's, you know, between coil and air, in terms of plushness, I think this one's a little bit more sensitive off the top. Okay, like you could get it to move by just lightly touching on the saddle. You could get the suspension to move very easily, and with the air, you push it, it doesn't move. You got to hit it pretty hard for that suspension to start moving. So it is a little bit more sensitive off the top, but once it's moving, you know, once you're riding, you really, it's pretty hard to tell between coil and air, because I think the suspension on this bike, it's pretty, they designed it pretty plush. Okay, in terms of bottom out support, when I had the air shock, I don't know how many tokens were in there, but it felt plenty supportive. You know, a big, you know, jump to flat I didn't feel anything harsh. Same thing with this one, a big jump to flat. I don't feel anything harsh. This one does have bottom out support, so you have a really tiny little bottom out bumper over there, and the reason why is because it does have hydraulic bottom out. Prevents it from making any harsh impacts at the very end of the stroke. But you know, jumping to flat and stuff like that on this bike feels fine. I haven't felt any thud or any harsh bottom out yet. Okay. But yeah, jumping's good. No complaints. Oh, another benefit of this bike is when you're pedaling past the speed limit of 20 miles per hour, you don't feel too much of a drag. Okay. You're able to pedal just fine. You could go past the speed limit without much effort, meaning, you know, other e-bikes, it feels like there's a small parachute that deploys as soon as sometimes you need that speed, right? You got to go over 20 miles an hour, 22, 25 miles an hour to clear a certain jump, right? And with some e-bikes, you got to pedal your ass off because it feels like there's a parachute deploy right behind you. And like, you know, it's just tough to get that speed to clear that jump, right? Sometimes, some jumps, okay? I'm not that good at boosting, so I kind of depend on speed to clear certain jumps. And this one, I don't notice too much of a detriment as you're speeding past the speed limit. Let's see, what else is there to talk about? Looks, how it handles. I mentioned this thing's like just like a regular mountain bike. It doesn't feel like a huge, big, heavy enduro bike. This one feels more like a long-legged trail bike, okay? It feels, because it's so playful, okay? Now, I could change how that bike feels by adjusting the chainstay length. This thing does have a flip chip out back. I'm not sure if you can see that here, but there's a flip chip out back where I could set it to 27.5 or 29. Setting it to 29 actually extends the length of the chainstay to about 442 millimeters, I believe. Okay, so 432 to 440, about 10 millimeters. And what that'll do is that'll turn it into a 450, 442 reach, 450 reach, 442 chainstay bike. And what that'll do is it'll give it much more stability. It'll feel more like an enduro bike, I think, once I do that. Right now with the short chainstay, it feels more like a long-legged trail bike. Okay, and also having a slightly longer chainstay, it might change the leverage curve just a little bit because you have a longer chainstay. You have a little bit more leverage, so I might have to up the spring to a 450 if I do that. Which, you know, I have that spring available. EXT gives you 2 springs for the price. It's an expensive shock, you know. It's $999. They charge $15 for shipping. No, I think it was free shipping. I'm not sure, but anyways, it was 1,000 out the door shipped, roughly 1,000 out the door shipped. But it comes with 260 gram shocks that you could potentially put on another bike. You know, they're lighter than the Fox SLS springs. You know, so it's a good deal. It's tuned for my weight, tuned for this bike. I you know, when I was working with EXC, I was telling them that what I was doing with the bike, and they were able to get me the shock and the tune that I wanted for this particular bike. I mentioned the offset bushings. You get them at offsetbushings.com. It's a 20 millimeter by 8. Okay, 20 by 8 offset bushing up there. It's about, I don't know, $25 ship to the US. Took about a week and a half to get the offset bushings. Other than that, I think that's it. Anyways, if you have any questions, how this bike rides, any questions about the setup, I did check the clearance. Obviously, I lowered the dropper. I was able to run this without a spring, bottom it out completely, and I still had like a good maybe 2.5 inches of clearance. So there's plenty of clearance everywhere throughout the frame. Remember, running this setup, essentially it's just like, you know, the stock shock is a 210 eye to eye. This one's essentially a 212 eye to eye. Once you put the offset bushings in place. So it's close to the same. It's a very similar eye to eye. So everything clears. This is a mullet setup. I'm not sure if it'll clear on a 29 rear. I haven't tested that, but on a mullet setup, there's ample clearance. Suspension's working great. There's plenty of room here. You see down here. There's ample gaps in place. Like you're not hurting the that suspension by putting this oversized shock in there. Okay, and when you bottom it out, again, ample clearance, no issues whatsoever. Other than that, yeah, I haven't made a video in a while, so if you guys are interested in more videos, maybe some ride footage, some jumps, whatever, I could probably do that again. Work's been busy, you know, life, work, family. It's been busy. It's been harder and harder to make these videos. So this is just with my iPhone, something I could record and post right away, where I don't have to do any editing. I used to have to do some editing, so I'm not going to do that. Yeah, lovely bike, great bike, super duper flexible in terms of its capability. At any moment, I could put the air shock back on. I probably have to put it in a steeper configuration because I have the 170 fork. But I'm not getting pedal strikes anymore with the 165 crank. Slightly higher bottom bracket height, again 449 I think when I measured it. That's a great bottom bracket height for this bike, you know, for a 170 rear end. That's a great 170 bike, 449 bottom bracket. That's good. That's pretty ideal in my opinion. Okay, all right, guess I'll finish my ride off. It's a pretty nice day today, cloudy. You know, it's end of December. Weather's starting to cool down a little bit, and it's lovely out here right now. So anyways, enjoy, have a nice day, bye.